So literature was the first thing about Mao. It's a Malaysian Chinese literature was the first thing. And also the arts, in art sphere, something was also mentioned. That is in 1952, some Singapore nowadays the Singapore artists at that time, so Malaysian artists, they went to Bali to seek for a new thing that they can sort of adjust themselves with both a Chinese identity but a local thing as well. The Liu Kang and other three later called Singapore pioneer artists, they went to Bali, and after they came back, they held an exhibition. It's really a success. But whether it's because of aesthetic value or its art value, more people intend to believe that it's because at that time, people in Singapore and Malaya, after the Second World War, it's a trauma. Something in Bali reminds them of the good old days. The first thing is good old days. The second thing is because they were really in need of a plural society at that time. The cultural combination of both, we were Chinese, ethnic Chinese, they were ethnic Chinese, but they had to adjust themselves to local scenery at that time. So here, this form of art sort of became a compromise. This painting was mentioned many times about Liu Kang's art. Liu Kang himself also declared that it's a combination of Chinese ink painting and the West local scenery. Chinese ink painting, we all say it's a non-single perspective. It's because Chinese ink painting is always painting scrolls. When you open the scroll from left to side, it's several. You can see this thing from the forefront as a man, and you just look into rather than look into it along the bridge, and you were attracted by the cartoons, and finally came back to the front. Is someone pushing the boat in the river. So they always declare that this is more like a combination of the Chinese ink painting ways and the Western art together with what was happening in the local scenery. So it really stands for a very good compromise. Then this is what I always mention. Singapore. That's why when Nanyang art is mentioned, later it's promoted as a Singapore icon, Singapore art history becomes the main plot. Because we can see after the independence of Singapore in 1965, after they start to hold the exhibition every year during National Day. You can see here, the National Day art exhibition has become a rally point for all artists and art societies to join in celebration of National Day, and thus to demonstrate their loyalty to and love of the Republic. Nation building is the concern of all, and artists have a special role to play in the rebuilding of our city and turning the ideas of gracious living into reality. It's a Minister of Culture. He himself also declared it could be a very important, the art could be a very important factor affecting our nation building. It's the process. It can be even a tool. So the paper here see two things. One is that Singapore, why they try to promote this art. Although in art history, it's rarely mentioned or it's put in a very, very non-important perspective. And also Liu Kang's transnational background, how it affects his way of being memorized in this thing. Okay, thank you.
We have about half an hour left, so plenty of time for Q&A. And now the floor is open. So if you'd like to ask any questions or any comments, you are very welcome. Yes, Professor Craig, please.
Not really ready to preparing some things, but it's a bit quiet, so I better step up. This is basically a comment about this extremely important project that Soren and the team are doing. It's going to be, as I say, a very important contribution, and I realize it's still preliminary and you're thinking through things, so what I have to say is just some comments really, and with implied questions, I guess. One important thing about this is that by looking at Mitchell and Thomas and taking your framework from people who have studied colonial societies and talking about the state effect, which is because you're using these people is basically colonial framework, you're making a big step forward in helping us understand Thailand not as something that's exceptional, but something that looks like it belongs to the rest of the history of the region. One would think that you're going to be undermining exceptionalism and the royal nationalist narrative, but I think it'll be a long time before much changes there. Academics are always doing things that don't necessarily accord with what governments and national leaders want to do, the way they think. This idea of the way time and place is organized by the gendarmerie's regulations and stipulations and so forth reminds me of many other things that are going on at the same time, including, and especially maybe, this very interesting work that one of my students is doing, Patrick Jory, on the history of manners, and Sombat Kong Pudi. Because Sombat Kong Pudi is exactly this kind of thing. It's regulating the way people behave in a different, apparently different way from the past. Not once did you mention the word modern, which is fine with me, but this is some kind of something new that's coming into the country. My own feeling about this, some of this interest in discipline and regulation, we say in Thai, is that it has to do with the monkhood. It has to do with an older form of discipline that carries through. This is a continuity. You're trying to do something else, you're trying to bring in something new, but I'm a historian, I always look back one step to see what was there before that makes this possible. And I think this is something that makes this possible, the Weetnai of the Buddhist monkhood. So I have two kind of comments, questions that maybe you could respond to. One is that you made a very big distinction between the old way in which the army organized its campaigns using the Horasat and the new kind of time that you're introducing. However, we know that this old way of time, of stipulating time, the old way of making decisions still continues today. When the army makes a coup, they have to figure out the rule. And when you make a land deal, you have to figure out the rule. So the old way of making decisions, I think this is a way of making decisions, frankly. This Horasat is a way of making decisions. It gives authority to a particular person or group to decide when to do something, to stipulate the rule. But it also helps in timing. And timing is very important in all aspects of life, whether it's army or buying land or deciding who to get married to or so forth and so on. So I think that this is, I mean, that's my interest in what happens to this old idea of time because it hasn't disappeared. This old way of stipulating when things should be done, deciding when things to be done. So my last comment, I'm sorry, this is a bit long. Is it too long? My last comment is, if you start from Mitchell, you get what you've talked about. You get the state effect. But if you start from inside and look out, who brings this? Who decides to bring these things in? How did this new way of thinking about time and space that you've located in the gendarmerie, and you've got these wonderful documents that allow you to do this. who decided, where did this idea come from that they should do this? I know Seidenfaden is involved, but one of the interesting things about Brummelhuis's book, The King of the Waters, is that you realize that the government in the Fifth Reign was run by three people: King Chulalongkorn, Prince Dewawong, and Prince Damrong. They sort of met as a kind of committee of three that ran the country, never mind the documents. We know about the documents. You go to the National Archives and read all the documents, but when they make big decisions like, should we borrow money to build the irrigation system? No, because we'll be too much indebted to the colonial and imperialist powers. We've already borrowed money for the railway, we won't do that. We won't build the big dams, we won't do the irrigation system. These people were making decisions on a daily basis. So I'm interested in what it looks like from the inside looking out, and where did they get this idea that they would where is it in the ether that how do they get access to this idea? Sorry, it's a bit long.
I can try to address the question. I don't know if it's going to be a good answer, but in terms of all way of perceiving time and new ways of perceiving time, of course, well, it's not in this presentation as such, but it's rather in my dissertation. But I was trying to argue that it's not cancelling each other out, it's actually complementing each other in many ways. And you can also see many old ways were being inserted with the new technology that came in, such as when you have the clock, the wristwatch that you can wear around and carry your time with you. And then there was an anecdote from, I think, who's that making the map McCarthy? And he was observing that there are some princes who was waiting and looking at his clock before making a step out in the morning. But then I was